Ukraine simply doesn't matter, just like Afghanistan. Israel, a more complicated question because of the Jewish aspect of it, because of the Holocaust, and because of the control that the pro-Israeli lobbies have of the American Congress and the American body politic today. I don't see us abandoning Israel like we did Afghanistan or Ukraine. What I do see us doing, however, is eventually abandoning Eretz Israel, Zionist Israel, Greater Israel. We've been very tolerant of these settlers that have gone out there and murdered Palestinians, stole their land, trying to establish this Greater Israel. We've been very tolerant of a Likud government. There's a lot of talk about from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. People say that's so anti-Semitic because what you're saying is you want to get rid of all the Jews, and it's a Hamas thing. Well, Hamas borrowed it from somebody. You want to know who they borrowed it from? The Likud Party. Yeah. The Likud Party came up with it in the early 1950s. From the river to the sea, only Jews will live there. No Palestinians. That's been the Likud Party. That's been Israel, Zionist Israel's vision. Get rid of all these Palestinians. And now they have a government, the Benjamin Netanyahu government, with this far right-wing coalition that's trying to make it a reality. It's going to fail. It's going to fail because the United States won't go along with it. It's going to fail because Hamas is beating the Israeli army to a standstill in Gaza, because Hezbollah is crushing the Israeli army up north, because Israel doesn't have the capacity to win. When you define victory as we are going to eliminate Hamas militarily and politically so there's nothing left, that ain't going to happen. Hamas is stronger today than they've ever been politically, and war is an extension of politics by other means. Hamas today, whether people believe it, know it at the time or not, let me just put it this way. When you demonstrate in favor of Palestine today, you're demonstrating in support of Hamas. Now, you might not recognize it, but understand this. The only reason why you're demonstrating is that Hamas launched a successful raid against the Israelis on October 7th. That's the only reason why any of us are talking about this today. On October 6th, Anya, we weren't talking about Palestine. We weren't talking about Palestine in September. August, July, June, go all the way back. We weren't talking about, because it didn't matter. It didn't factor. Only specialists talked about it, and it was done in a very esoteric fashion because America, like the rest of the world, had given up hope that Israel would ever allow a Palestinian state. So we had bought into something called the Abrams Accords, where we artificially did away with Palestine by making maps that made any Palestinian state politically unacceptable, even to the Palestinians. We bought off Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority. So his sole concern is the security of Israel, not the benefit of the Palestinian people. And then we bought off the Arab nations by having them link themselves with Israel. Normalization of relations, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia was next in line. And once that happened, once that was done, there was never going to be a Palestinian state. Hamas knew this. So they carried out October 7th. And what's happened since then? Everybody's talking about a Palestinian state today. Everybody's talking about it. Can't ignore it. That's a huge political victory for Hamas, a huge victory for the Palestinian people, and a huge defeat for Israel. Israel has already lost this war because of that. War is an extension of politics by other means. Politically, the world has turned against Israel because of the horrific crimes they have perpetrated against the Palestinian people. Their flagrant violations of the law of war, their absolute insistence, lack of humanity when it comes to the Palestinian people. The world sees Israel for the reality that it is. And it's not a nice picture. It's a bad picture. So I do think that we are looking at a strategic defeat of Israel. Israel will exist, but Israel now, for the first time in its history, has to realistically accept the reality of a two-state solution at a minimum, where the borders are defined by the 1967 boundaries. And this is a Hamas victory. But it's also a victory for the United States, because the Biden administration, and I think the Trump administration was the anomaly, but everybody going back, we're always uncomfortable about what Israel's doing with the settlements. I think there was a recognition that the political cost domestically was impossibly high. Take the lesson of Dennis Kucinich, the Democratic congressman from Cleveland, Ohio. He articulated vociferously and very effectively in support of the Palestinian people. The American Israeli Public Action Committee intervened, had him redistricted out, meaning that He had 800,000 voters that would have put him in office forever. And they cut up his district so that he lost it. He was redistricted, couldn't get voted in, out of Congress. That's what happens if you're in the US Congress and you speak out against Israel. That's the control that the Israeli lobby has on the United States Congress. And this is why we have such a hard time holding Israel to account for the crimes that it commits, because the Jewish Zionist entity controls America. Now, that's not meant to be, I'm not somebody who buys into anti-Zionism equates to anti-Semitism. It doesn't. Anti-Zionism is anti-Zionism. Anti-Semitism is anti-Jewish. I am vociferously against anti-Semitism. I will be the first person, if someone says, let's march on the synagogue, I'll say, hell no. You will never interfere with people's right to practice their religion. You should never be afraid to be a Jew in America. Never be afraid to be a Jew in America. We're a nation that believes in freedom of religion, freedom of expression. So I will die in defense of an Israeli synagogue. I will die in defense of not an Israeli synagogue, I'm sorry, of a Jewish synagogue, of a Jewish cultural center here in America. Those are Americans, and I will give my life in their defense. But if you articulate that you are in support of Eretz Israel, greater Israel, you're in support of a concept that is premised on the inherent superiority of the Jews over the Arabs, God-given right to eliminate the Palestinians, to create a Jewish-only homeland, I'm against that. And that doesn't make me anti-Semitic. That just makes me anti-Zionist. That makes me anti-fascist. That makes me pro-humanity, pro-Palestinian. There's a difference between the two, and I'm not going to let the U.S. Congress define that term for me. They are wrong. They should reread the Constitution, freedom of speech, freedom of association. They can't legislate that right out. I will always articulate against evildoers. And right now, the best way to define the Israeli state is an evildoer.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much. I know you have to go. I appreciate so much you coming on today with Andrei. Really, really grateful for your time, your energy, your wisdom, and your knowledge, and everyone appreciates it. I hope you didn't read the chat, because sometimes it distracts, I know.
I'm under strict orders not to.
Follow your wife's advice, right?
Yes.
So